Are you a Christian songwriter wishing you could be heard by the right people in Nashville? Yeah, we get it. You've been writing for years, but you have no idea how to be heard, how to get your songs out there, or how to connect your talent with opportunities. You feel stuck and wonder if you'll ever get a real break. NCS Bootcamp is your chance to be heard by taking your songwriting to a level you've only dreamed of. It gives you hands-on, personalized coaching and mentoring to help you think and write like a professional Christian songwriter determined to impact the world with your songs. If you're ready to empower your songwriting dreams, go to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com/bootcamp to book your free songwriting breakthrough strategy call today. Become the songwriter you were born to be with NCS Bootcamp.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisum, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the show today. One of popular CCM artist Jason Gray's favorite quotes is from Swiss psychiatrist Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, and she wrote that the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. Well, Jason Gray is certainly one of those beautiful people who didn't just happen. He's known his share of struggle and suffering and loss in losing loved ones and even the breakup of his own marriage. And yet he continues to bring the love and the hope and the joy of Jesus through his music and through his touring and just through his writing, even around town here in Nashville. His newest album, Where the Light Gets In, is a reflection of this hope. And despite the woundedness of his own life, he is still walking in the light of Jesus. And so I wanted to bring back out this episode with Jason Gray that we did about a year ago as an encore performance because I just didn't want people to miss the beauty of Jason Gray. So if you are familiar with Jason, you're not going to be surprised. If you're new to Jason Gray, I think you're in for a treat as you sit back and enjoy this encore performance from the Song Revolution podcast archives with CCM artist Jason Gray. Hey everybody, it's John Chisum for Nashville Christian Songwriters, and I am in Franklin, Tennessee at the Centricity Music Writers Room with a new friend, Jason Gray, CCM artist. Jason, glad to have you here today.
Man, it's so great to be here.
Yeah.
I just heard the conversation that you had with John Mays a few days ago.
John,
and
so great.
I thought I could totally beat that conversation. And so
we're going to knock it down today.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure many of you know that Jason Gray is a very much loved and popular CCM artist. He's been with Centricity for about 10 years. He had some releases earlier than that, 3 releases, and then came on in 2007 with John Mays and with the Centricity Music people, and has had a wonderful ride, writing and touring, performing on his own, of course, but with artists such as Lauren Daigle, Sanctus Real, Natalie Grant, collaborations with a lot of people, too many to mention here, Brandon Heath, Big Daddy Weave, and so many more. So here you are. We're just going to jump right in.
All right, let's jump.
Here you are, Jason. You know, just such a popular and very much loved guy and artist here. And yet I know, just from doing research for this interview today, that your life really isn't picture perfect. I mean, you have a speech impediment, stuttering that you deal with, and that has been with you all of your life. And you didn't have such a great life growing up from everything that I've researched, and yet here you are. I mean, people look at you and think, wow, that guy's got just everything together. How do you feel about that?
I don't know if anybody actually thinks that. I mean, if they do, they just need to hang out with me for like a half an hour, and then they realize, no, this guy's a total mess. But you know, we all are. You know, I think you know, ever since I was a little boy, I had a sense that I'd be doing music, you know, and then that was complicated in my mind because I had a speech handicap, you know, and wondered, well, how's this going to work, you know, and used to believe that my story would be that God would heal me, and then that would be my story I could bring to people to give them hope and encouragement, you know, and was angry with the Lord when He didn't heal me, and I was confused because I had a sense of calling, but I also, you know, well, like, how's this supposed to work? And have been so grateful over the years to discover that my speech handicap is not the liability that I was afraid it was, and that it was in so many ways a gift, in that I think there's, you know, my speech handicap is a very very obvious brokenness. When I open my mouth, it's clear. Oh, you know, like he's not perfect, and I think there's something about that helps put people at ease, you know, because our brokenness makes us a safe place for each other, and so it's been a gift, you know. Like I think it well, okay, so when I'm talking with an audience and I explain that I have a speech handicap, what I say is, and you know what, I bet that you like me just a little bit more because I have a speech handicap. And they laugh, and we all laugh. And then I say, and I believe that because I know that if I got to hang out with you and I understood your brokenness, your imperfection, your weakness a little bit more, I would like you a little bit more too, you know, just because these things, because our strengths are mostly only good for impressing each other, which makes us then insecure and compare ourselves to each other. But our weaknesses, you know, like when I understand your weakness and when you were open about that, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you know what? He doesn't have his act together either. That means I don't have to hide.
It's great.
And then we're able to kind of come out and actually be present with each other. And I think my speech handicap accomplishes that very, very quickly in my concerts, you know. So so it's been a real gift to understand that, you know. And I remember, I think it was Rich Mullins who talked about, you know, how every preacher preaches the same sermon every week, you know, but it's just like a new version of it. And this idea that we're all entrusted with a sensitivity that defines what we talk about, you know. And I think that my speech handicap has shaped the kind of songs I write, what I talk about with my audience.
Right.
You know? So many of my songs return again and again to the idea that it's in our weakness that His strength is perfected, and the virtues of weakness, you know. So it's been it's something I've come to be grateful for. It's hard to order a pizza over the phone, but it comes with many other gifts.
That's great. That's great. Well, you've gone really deep, which is fantastic. You're right at the very beginning of our talk today. We've got a little storm going on here. It's really kind of a beautiful little place to be right here.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, I was telling you before we started recording today that you've got a brand new fan in me, because I knew a lot of your radio songs, but I've dug back into your catalog a bit, and as a writer and a wordsmith myself, I would so value your words, and I know you have a lot of great co-writers, but I know that the depth comes out of your life as well. And I want to talk about those things as we go along here. And I know we've got some songs to come up that you're going to perform live for us here today, which is great. But how do you feel that your early years, which, as I've read up on you, were pretty stormy, and you can say as little or as much about that as you want, but how do you feel like ultimately that has guided your own songwriting and your music career and ministry?
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that most people on some level feel kind of like an outsider. I think we all kind of, and we all have a longing to belong, The context in which I grew up feeling those things was, I grew up in a broken home, and then later an abusive home situation, a lot of chaos in my life, so those experiences, I think, have developed a sensitivity in me for other people who have just had a rough go of it and feel like they're broken and feel like they're outsiders. I think about this, like okay. When I wonder about where things began for me, I think it goes back to, I was driving home from school as a 16-year-old. I was a brand new believer, and I'm driving home from school because home was hard. It meant that school was hard, and then, and to top things off, my girlfriend had just broken up with me, and man, I thought it was the end of the world. Like, wow, I'll never love again. I thought it was all over for me at 16, and, but I'm driving home from school, and my heart is broken, and I'm stressed out, and I'm crying out to God. I'm in my car, and I'm crying, and I have this moment where I realize, as a new believer, I think, you know what? Everybody goes to God when their heart is broken. Where does God go when his heart is broken? And in this moment of grand presumption and naivety in the car, I wiped the tears from my eyes. I said, Lord, I just want you to know, if you ever need a shoulder to cry on, I want to be there for you, And as hokey as that sounds, I believe that he honored that prayer, and he answered that prayer, and he began to break my heart with the things that break his heart. And I think back on that moment, and I think that all of my songs, all my ministry, all the whatever good has come out of my life has come from that prayer, as he began to answer that. And I think that his heart breaks for people who feel on the outside and alienated, So if I'm in a room and there's a worship service happening, and there's all the praise songs happening and everyone's into it, the particular sensitivity that God has entrusted to me is, in that moment, I can't help but think of the people in the room who feel alienated by all of that, who are there. They came because they want to be there, but they can't praise, and this the happy praise music makes them feel more lonely. You know what I mean?
I do.
and they're kind of trapped inside themselves, you know. And so if I'm in that situation and I have an opportunity to play a song, if I go up there, I'm usually going to play the song that I hope is going to give them a point of entry, you know. And actually, all of my songs, I try to include some moment of acknowledgement of brokenness that I hope will be a point of entry, you know. So like even a song like Good to Be Alive, which is a happy pop song, in a song like that, I try to include points of entry so that a person who's not feeling like it's good to be alive, they can still hang with me in that moment, and they don't feel excluded, you know. And I think that sensitivity stems from that prayer as well, because I think that God cares about those people, you know. His heart is with the person in the worship service who feels alienated. And so if I can play a part in opening a door for them to enter into that experience by acknowledging brokenness, or that life is hard, or you might not even know if you believe in God right now, but you're here, you came, that counts. Yeah. Wow, that is worship in and of itself, that you walked in the door. That's your worship for today, you know. That's all you got to do, you know. And so anyway, yeah.
So there's a lot of transparency, obviously, in what you do. Do you feel like there is a balance between, I don't know if there's such thing as too much transparency,
there is,
but you know, but it's like, how much do you feel like you can, how far can you go, right?
I think about that a lot. I probably err on the side of going too far at times, you know, but I don't want to, I'd like to be transparent in a way that invites people in, but not in a way that bleeds on people, you know, like I don't want to bleed on people. Right. When I was going, you know, it was very natural for me to operate with a lot of disclosure for so many years of my ministry, and just kind of like, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm struggling, etc., you know. And that was meaningful and good. But then, you know, I went through a divorce a few years ago, and that was a years-long breaking down and just the most painful experience I've ever been through, you know. But I didn't feel like I could talk about it with my audience for a few reasons. One was that in the midst of it, I didn't know how that story was going to end, you know, and so like I wanted to, and also it wasn't all my story to tell. But my mode of operation was usually, if I'm struggling with something, I'm going to struggle with it kind of out in the open. And I saw beautiful fruit come out of that approach, you know, but in this case, it didn't feel right to do that. Later on, in the process of all that, I asked one of my heroes about it, Walter Wongren, who is an author, and he helped me understand this. He said, you can't really talk about something you're struggling with until that chapter is closed. He said, because, you know, like I always struggled with, we would often hear people give testimonies about, I used to struggle with this, but then I found victory in this way, you know? And I was always like, why can't the person say, you know, last night I struggled with pornography. You know, like if a pastor or a church leader or a singer-songwriter or whoever was that transparent, it would make the whole room uncomfortable, you know.
Up. You kidding me?
And And I had a lot of contempt about that. I thought that that's not how it should be. That's not honest. There isn't healing in that. I thought, let's all talk about what we're struggling with right this moment. What's the scariest thing for us to talk about? Let's talk about that, and in doing that, allow grace into that, I've come to understand that I think we should do that, but with the people who are closest to us, but in terms of bringing that to a congregation or an audience, Walter Wongren, he talked about how if you talk about something before a chapter has closed or resolved, you don't realize, but what you're doing is you're asking your audience for something. You're asking for their sympathy. You're asking for their support. You're asking for them to agree with you or to take your side. But if you wait until the chapter closes, then you can talk about it and you have something to give them and you aren't asking them for something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And that was like, oh, wow, that's it. I understand that now, So in the midst of my divorce, if I had talked about it, I would have been asking my audience for support or sympathy or to take my side without realizing it. But if I waited until after that chapter closed, now I can talk to my audience about it and I have something to give them. I have companionship to offer to people who are going through the same thing. I have understanding or compassion or,
That's really
all those
good.
things and stuff. So that has helped me to understand how transparent is too transparent. And I'm always asking myself, like, if I talk about this, is it going to elicit sympathy or ask for support? And if so, I'm going to wait. And then until a time where I can talk about it, where I have something to offer,
That's really great. And one of the things that I have written about with from my clients, my songwriting clients, is how to redeem your pain. And that kind of speaks to that, right? Because you haven't really fully in any given area, processed enough to the point like you're just saying, to where you have something to give, rather than receive. So Walter Wongren's, I think that advice is fantastic. Great. I would kind of put that under the category of redeeming your pain, right? And
absolutely.
So
that's good. Yeah.
Cool.
I am a verbal processor.
I know, right?
And I've learned that my audience isn't the place to do my verbal processing, but my community is the place to do that. That's good. So
now I remember a story. You were talking about your divorce, and I remember reading a story about. I'm not sure exactly when it was happening. Whether it was when it was final, or you just decided, or whatever. But then a couple came up to you backstage or at a concert, and it seemed like every concert from then on, some couple came up. Am I remembering that correctly? Or something sort of like that, where you felt suddenly forced into praying for other people out of your own pain.
The process of divorce is a long, painful one, years and years. And when it finally was over, like the papers were signed, I was so exhausted and depressed and burnt out, and I didn't feel like I had anything to give. I was utterly broken, and but I still had to pay the bills, So I had an opportunity to go out on the road with Big Daddy Weave, and I was grateful for that because I love those guys. I've been on the road with them before. I knew that would be a very healing experience. They're just so great. And I was the opening act, so I was only going to have to play for like a half an hour. I thought, I can do that. I can go out for 3 months. I can play for a half an hour and then go hide in my bunk. That's about all I can do. So I go out on this tour, though, and one of the things that they do is they do an altar call at the end of each night, and and people come up for prayer, and then the artists go down from the stage and they pray with people. And I told the guys, I said, oh, you guys, I love that you do that. I don't know if I have anything to give here. I don't know what I believe about God or prayer. You know, I just know the thing that I prayed the hardest for, to be healed, didn't work out, and I don't know what to do with that yet. So I don't know if I'm your guy for that. And they were like, you know what? You don't have to worry about that. You know, you can do as much as you want to. You don't have to do anything at all. Go on the bus. And so that was my plan. I thought I would feel bad for whoever came to me for prayer, you know, because I didn't know how to pray yet. So I was just going to bow out. But I've developed a discipline in my life that, you know, like if I don't want to go to church or something like that, I'll make myself go, because if I can see that the Lord is doing something over in this area, I want to make sure that I put myself in the path of that so I can get hit by something holy, you know. And so,
cool.
So the first night of the tour was in Wisconsin, and the time for the altar call came, and I decided, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna go out there and see what happens. And so I went out there, and that first 11-day run of shows, each night, the people who ended up in my line to come and get prayer were people in relationship crisis. Their marriages were coming apart. And I was so afraid that people who would like be asking for healing would be there, and I'd be like, I don't know how to pray for healing, you know. I'm so sorry, you need to ask one of these other guys. But the people in relationship crisis, I was like, oh my goodness, I know how to pray for that. You know, this is the one thing that I feel like I know how to pray for. And that was very affirming to me, and I experienced it as if God was saying, you still have something to give. And so that was a very healing, restorative thing to happen right after the divorce. It was, wow. It changed my life, really.
Wow. And that's God redeeming your pain.
I think so,
know?
yeah.
I mean, in some ways, you know, for someone else.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, when you go through seasons like that, or hardships or experiences, are there certain songs that kind of become identified with that because you wrote it either during it or about that?
Huh.
I mean, I don't know. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah. There are songs, you know, when I go do a concert, I try to not make it about me as much as possible, you know, and I try to serve the audience, you know, so I'm usually not thinking in those terms. But there are songs that came out of those experiences for sure, like Not Right Now and Nothing Is Wasted and Death Without a Funeral, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that one.
Yeah,
I know you're prepared to sing for us today. I don't know if that would be appropriate to pull out at
I'd love to play that one. Oh, I could, yeah.
Because, I mean, knowing some of your background, the divorce and everything, I wondered about Death Without a Funeral, if that was kind of tied in with any of that, because it's such a moving song and so unlike anything on Where the Light Gets In, but so awesome. The whole album is awesome.
Oh, that's kind of you to say. You know, I felt like I wanted to write a song about the divorce. I needed to, for myself. But how do you do that? You know, how do you, and so I had an idea, because I experienced my divorce as a kind of death, and realized that, like, if if somebody I loved died, everybody around you, they know what to do. They gather around you and they help you and they make food and they help you take care of the funeral and all these things. But when you go through a divorce, kind of nobody knows exactly what to do. Right. It's very uncomfortable and they're confused, you know. So it can be very lonely. So I wanted to do a song about that, but also I think that everybody goes through all kinds of deaths where there isn't a funeral. The beautiful thing about a funeral is that it gives you a moment in time where you mark the moment and you lay the thing to rest, and you get to have a sense of closure, you know. But there are so many deaths that we experience, whether it's the death of a marriage or the death of a dream or of a belief or a career, where you don't get to mark the moment and have a sense of closure, you know. So it was my hope too that I would be able to offer a song that might act as kind of a funeral service for people who experience those kinds of deaths, you know. I wrote it with my friend Andy Gullahorn, who I don't know if you know his work, but I think he's the best songwriter in Nashville. And he was close with me and knew my family, and so he was the only one at that moment that I trusted to bring this idea to and have him help me walk it out. So yeah, I could play that one for you. Okay, let's see. Haven't played this one in a little while.
We'll be very forgiving.
Okay, good. There is no stone to lay the flowers down beside. No mention in the paper, though something clearly died. No gathering for family and friends to eulogize. It's a death without a funeral. There is no book to sign for people filing in. No table for the pictures where they'd say, remember when. No song is sung about how all good things come to an end. It's a death without a funeral. And if you see me, I'm still breathing, though a million things have died inside of me. There is no healing without grieving. No wonder why it's hard to rest in peace, when there's nothing we can bury in the dirt. No place to lay the memories of all the things that were. No way to feel the closure, no ending to the hurt. It's a death without a funeral. And if you see me and I'm still breathing, though a million things have died inside of me, there is no healing without grieving. No wonder why it's hard to rest in peace. One apple hadn't fallen with the leaves. As I reached up, I remembered how we both planted that tree. With one bite, I was surprised to find the fruit was still so sweet.
It's beautiful, Jason. Wow.
Thank you.
So many choice lines in that thing, man. It just... one of the things I talk with the songwriters about all the time is pulling people into the song with imminent imagery.
Yeah.
You know, and you talking about there not being a book to sign and all the flowers to lay at the headstone and all those things. It's like you're just there. You're just right in the moment in a song. And I think that's a real art. Well, of course it's an art. I mean, but it's the craft. You know, I have so many people say, well, you know, God just gives me my songs. And it's like, how's that working out for you? You know?
I know, right?
But it's like there's a real craft. And you are a wordsmith, a tunesmith. Of course, you're a marvelous singer and player. And it just, the whole package communicates such emotion. And that's another thing that's really hard for a lot of the writers to kind of understand how to do. And that's what we're trying to teach people and help them accomplish their calling by coming alongside and helping them do the things that you do, right?
Yeah.
So before we started taping today, we were talking about maybe, was it 3 different approaches to songwriting depending on the song? Do you want to get into some of that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. You know, I'll comment on something you said. I want to humbly acknowledge that I believe that God is present in the process of writing a song. You know, so like there is. It's weird because songs do feel like a gift. Like that song feels like like a gift, where I don't feel like I can take credit. But at the same time, like we worked really, really hard on that song, you know. I work really hard on all my songs. And so there is that weird thing where, no, I worked on it, you know, like but also it feels like a gift at the same time, you know. And so a sense where I don't want to presume to say, I received this song from the Lord, you know. I'd rather, you know, I'd rather him receive songs from me. Like, I'd rather give him the songs than presume to say that he gave me the song. Awesome. But there is something very mysterious about that. But I don't feel like I have any songs. Usually when a person says, here's a song that the Lord gave me, it's usually not a very good song. You know, like, oh, you know, I think he could do better than that, maybe, you know.
I know. I try so hard not to be snarky
I know,
about it.
I don't want to be snarky either.
But it's like, why does God seem to give the best songs to the people who know how to write?
Exactly. Wow. Yeah. Exactly. So there's that I wanted to comment on. But the 3 kinds of songs I write, there's the songs that I write for myself that just naturally come out of me, just if I didn't have to think about anybody else, or let's see, I think Frederick Buechner, who's an author, he would call those songs an artisan well, where it just kind of flows up out of you, you know. And when I'm working on a song like that, I give myself permission to not manage the song all that much and be overly concerned if the song is useful. Right. You know, like will this song help further my career? You know, okay. Here's an example. David Wilcox talked about this, about how there are at least 2 different kinds of songs you can write. One of them is like, you know what? I want to do something good for people. I want to do something that is good for all the people in the United States. I want it to have a broad reach where it touches everybody, and so I'm I'm going to put in the work, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure a tax refund for everybody. Because it's for everybody, it's only going to be 8 cents. But everybody gets something. And that's one kind of song, you know, like I got a feeling tonight's going to be a good night. That's worth about 8 cents. Everybody enjoyed that song a little, you know, and that's great. There isn't anything wrong with that, you know. But then there's a song that's like, I'm going to apply my effort to running into that burning building and pulling one person out. And it's not for everybody, but for that one person, it's everything, you know. So I think about that. So Death Without a Funeral is an example of a song. I know it's not for everybody. It's never going to be a big hit song, but I would hope that for the people it is meaningful for, that it's like, that's the song I needed, and it saved my life, or it helped me when I needed it the most, you know. So when I write those songs, it's more about just kind of opening up my heart and just kind of receiving what comes, you know. If I'm going to write for my audience, let's say like for radio, the key for me is, okay, so what can be hard about writing for radio is like, how do I do that and not prostitute myself?
Right.
How do I not do it in a manipulative way where, okay, I know the kind of song you want. I know the demographic. I know that it's a soccer mom who is stressed out in her minivan. If I know that that's who I'm singing to, then all of a sudden I have the knowledge of good and evil right there in front of me, and I can see the buttons I can push that'll get her to respond the way that I want to, and then I can approach a song in a manipulative way that will advance my career, that will get my song played on the radio, that will get people to buy it, you know, all of that. How do I not do that? How do I do it instead motivated by love, when I recognize that my job is to love my audience and not be manipulative? And if I can come to that place out of a place of love and recognize that, okay, this person, a radio listener, I could have contempt in my heart and be like, you know, they're so shallow, they wouldn't even understand Death Without a Funeral, right? And the best songs aren't ever going to get played. I could be all angry and full of contempt. And that's just not helpful. And it's arrogant too, you know. Or I can come from a place of compassion and say, this person is so stressed out and overwhelmed. I don't think in their minivan driving their kids to school, I think that Death Without a Funeral would be more than they could bear right now. It's not going to be helpful for them right now, you know? And so what is the language? What are the things that I can talk about that might open up that door? And maybe they'll buy my record or come to a show, and then at that point we can dig deeper. But how can I love this person where they're at right now? And so I try to let that shape the songs I write that are aimed at radio, you know. So coming from a place of love and not contempt or bitterness or self-righteousness, or,
well,
you know, does that make sense?
Oh, it's totally great. And I'm, you know, much more familiar with your music now, having kind of boned up for this interview today. And I, like I told you already, I'm a new fan and knew some of the radio stuff, but there's such a deep well there. And I love your whole idea of points of entry, because you're really giving Becky, the soccer mom, you know, a point of entry into the possibility of ministry. So we've heard Death Without a Funeral. Yeah. So do you want to play an example? Is your current single Sparrow, is that the one they're playing right now?
And I would play that one, but my guitar's not tuned for it. So okay. I might play a previous one. Okay, if that's all right. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just going to say, maybe tell us a little bit about I know are we going too long for you? It's like it's gotten longer as we go along.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's because I have a speech handicap, and it takes me forever to say anything. Hold on one second. I just have to.
It's totally all right.
I just have to text my lunch guy. All right, done. Hold on a second. I'll call in a bit. There, you just heard me voice text on your podcast. There we go. No, it's good. All right.
But just a tiny
Maybe
insight.
be more succinct here.
A tiny insight of what makes this commercial. And I mean, you don't have to go too long on it, but I mean, what would be different about this than Death Without a Funeral?
Yeah, I'm just, I think it's hard for me to articulate that as much as I know that when I get there, you know. I think that I think when a person is trying to hold it together, you know, they're just trying to make life work, there are scary emotional places that they aren't able to go to in that place, you know what I mean? So I think it's more about not going to those places before they are ready or able to. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. In a concert, I start with the upbeat songs. I make a lot of jokes. I use a lot of humor. And about a half hour in is when people, they're relaxed enough and they're open enough that then you can go into those places, you know? So I guess I think about my radio songs in that way too, you know. So
which one is this?
This is called With Every Act of Love, and I wrote it after. I should say too that like something that is a meaningful way for me to approach what I do is I want to have something to contribute. Bob Briner, I think was his name, was an author who spoke years ago about, you know, rather than complaining about the field that you're working in and then leaving it and abdicating your voice there, why not go deeper into it and see if you can make a contribution, be a part of the change that you want to see, you know? So like if I complain about not hearing the kinds of songs that I want to hear on Christian radio or the ideas that I wish people were talking about, I can either complain about it and leave, or I can do something about it. So it's been meaningful for me to take concepts that I read in these great books by Frederick Buechner, Walter Wangerin, G.K. Chesterton, N.T. Wright, and to realize I think the average believer out there isn't going to have time and space to read these books. So if they're going to hear these ideas, it's probably not going to happen unless I or someone else writes a song about it and brings the idea to them, you know. So this song came out of reading N.T. Wright's book called Surprised by Hope, and the idea that the kingdom of God isn't something that we are waiting for, but something that we allow to happen right here and now. And anyway, so it's called With Every Act of Love. I know I got to play this, but there's a great story about it I want to share with you. I'll play it and then I'll do the story afterwards. Oh, that was bad. Here we go. Sitting at the stoplight, he can't be bothered by the heart cry written on the cardboard in her hands. But when she looks him in the eye, his heart's broken open wide as he feels the hand of God reach out through him. As heaven touches earth, we bring the kingdom come, with every act of love. Jesus, help us carry shines through with every act of love. We bring the kingdom come. Whoa, oh. There's silence at the table. He wants to talk, but he's not able, for all the shame that's locked him deep inside. But her words are the medicine when she says they can begin again, and forgiveness will set him free tonight. As heaven touches earth, oh, 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 oh. We bring the kingdom come, oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus, help us carry you. Liven us, your light shines through with every act of love. We bring the kingdom come. God put a million doors in the world for his love to walk through. One of those doors is you. I said God put a million doors in the world for his love to walk through. One of those doors is you. Oh, 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 oh. We bring the kingdom come. Oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus, help us carry you. Liven us, your light shines through with every act of love. We bring the kingdom come. Whoa, with every act of love. We bring the kingdom come. Whoa, whoa. Yeah. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come.
Dude, that's awesome. Awesome. What do
Oh,
say
thank
about
you.
that? So you had a story.
Well, yeah, I was making that record and had all the songs, but I didn't feel like I had the song that would be the single, you know. And my life was very stressful at that time. It was like in the midst of the divorce, and because of the stress, I lost my voice and I did some damage, and I had to go on vocal rest. And we had to record in about 8 weeks. And I had one more collaboration on the books I was supposed to do with Jason Ingram, who is an amazing songwriter. And I had this idea, and earlier I had a sense, I think if we meet and we work on this song, it's going to be the song that we've been waiting for. But then all of a sudden, I lose my voice. I'm in pain when I sing. I'm on vocal rest. Well, how are you supposed to go into a co-write, you know, with no voice, you know? And I was talking with John Mays about it, who I have to say he's been the best thing to happen to me in my music ministry and in my songwriting, and an amazing friend too, and a mentor. But he's I'm not sure where I'd be, you know, if he weren't in my life, for sure. We could do a whole podcast about that, actually, song mentorship, but I called him up, and we had been at a retreat where Reed Arvin, I don't know if you know who he is, he was talking about how the key to jumpstarting the creative engine is to take a tool off the table, because our minds are designed to problem solve. And so if you take a tool off the table, it's going to force you into problem solving mode, and you're going to approach things in a new way. And it was very meaningful, and you know, like it reminded me of Peter Gabriel, and how he had a rule that he had made on his earlier solo albums was, he said, no hi-hat. We're not going to have any hi-hat. And he would do that because he believed that artists are devious, and if you say you can't do something to an artist, they're going to figure out a different way to do it, you know? And so So the idea of removing a tool from the table to jumpstart creativity was meaningful. And I called up John. I said, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this co-write. Actually, I think I emailed him because I couldn't speak, And he emailed me back saying, well, this is a tool that has been taken off the table. I think you should keep the co-write and go into it and see what happens. And so not having a voice to look for melodies leading up to the co-write forced me to look for them on my guitar.
Cool.
And so I broke into like a new melodic place because I didn't have my voice, So that was, and it was my first #1 song. And so I think all that's very interesting,
great song,
and meaningful, So
that is great. It's a great story too. It's a great thing to think about taking the tool off the table. Well, as we sort of begin to kind of bring it to a close, could we cover all 3 areas of the song? I don't want to promise that and then not deliver that.
Yeah, sure. So. We didn't. The third one for me is the rarest, and also I think the most feels the most holy when I get to those places. I was reading an interview with Leonard Cohen, who wrote Hallelujah, and all those
crazy, amazing,
great songs, and he talks about how he believes that some songs are meant to be. They're meant to be an altar, like the ones in the Old Testament that the Jews were supposed to build, an altar of unhewn stone, not touched by the craftsman. And they are meant to be a snapshot of a moment without all kinds of crafting and when you can get to that kind of a place where a song comes up out of you, then if you can just like leave it and not go back and so I've had like 3 of those songs in my lifetime, and where I wrote the song and a lot of it I wasn't even sure what the song meant, and then years later it was like, oh, that's what that meant. You know what I mean? Wow. And so there's something magical and holy and very rare in my mind about those songs. They also aren't songs that I think will usually end up on a record or would get played. But this one did. I was making A Way to See in the Dark, and I brought it to a song meeting. I was almost positive it wouldn't end up on the record, and I played it, and Sean said, well, that one absolutely has to go on the record. And so that was great. But it was a song I wrote in a moment of great pain in the midst of my depression, with all that was going on in my marriage. I was wrestling late in the night, and I couldn't see any hope or a way out, and it felt more than I knew how to bear, and all I could think about was going up in my attic, and I knew there was a heavyweight extension cord up there, and I, just ending my life. 3 different times I got up out of bed and I walked up to the attic, and then I went, said, no, this is not the way. This would, this would be a horrible thing to do to your boys. And so I'd go back to bed, and the Lord, He knows me. He knows that I'm a sucker for a song lyric, So as I'm struggling with this, it begins to form as a lyric in my mind, and that was enough to draw me away from this dark idea in my mind, and to draw me instead downstairs, where I sat down and I sang this lyric, and then all of a sudden this song came out of me in about 20 minutes. And so I can play that one for you. I don't play it that often, but it did end up on the record. And It's a song that once it came out, I just I let it be. Here we go. I spent some days looking for a length of rope and a place to hang it from the end of my hope. But where I thought hope had ended, I always find a little bit more. It's not like I'm trying to be optimistic. If the truth be told, I'd rather dismiss it and be free of the burden of the hope that living requires. To bring my heart to every day and run the risk of fearlessly loving without running away. Jesus is speaking, but it's so hard to hear when disciples with swords are cutting off ears, broken and bleeding, waiting for healing to come. The wounded's a part that I've learned to play well, though the wound may run deeper than I know how to tell. Where pain's an addiction that keeps me buried alive. When it's all that I know, it's hard to leave it behind and bring my heart to every day and run the risk of fearlessly loving without running away. Oh, my eyes are not lifted up. My heart is not lifted up, but calm and quiet is my soul. Like a child with his mother is my soul. I lost the lyric. After a while in the dark, your eyes will adjust, and in the shadows you'll find the hand you can trust, and the still small voice that calls like the rising sun. Come and bring your heart to every day and run the risk of fearlessly loving without running away. You must run the risk of fearlessly loving without running away.
Dude, wow. That's phenomenal.
I should have ended on the happier one.
No. I think it's great. I think it's just testimony to the depth of who you are. And as you were playing that and the others today, it's like anybody who is cynical about CCM obviously doesn't know who you are. And, I'm so honored you'd be on our podcast today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And we didn't even talk about half the things we were going to talk about.
I know. So well, maybe we'll do that part two a couple of months from now when you want to come back on the show.
That sounds great.
We call this the Song Revolution podcast, and that's intentional because Nashville Christian songwriters exist to empower Christian songwriters. And that's not just to empower them to get on the radio. It's just to empower them to fulfill their call. And today, you've shared some deep and some awesome things You've been very vulnerable and transparent in such a great way. I feel like it's been a holy time. You know,
good.
I feel a weightiness, you know, you sharing that story and that song. And so anybody that's cynical, man, you just get a hold of some of Jason's music and steep yourself in it and take some lessons, you know, here, because this is how it's done. This is the craft, but it's the heart also, right? I mean, it's not just craft. It's not just unformed heart, but it's really that wonderful combination. So I have just 2 more questions.
Yeah,
and
good.
The first one is, do you have any brief, I really hate tips, tricks, and hacks. I hate that. I think that's so anti-art, right?
Yeah.
But do you have anything, 1 or 2 tiny little things, you don't have to go into long lessons, that you share about your songwriting, and then kind of what's next for you? So those are my last 2 questions as we wrap up today.
You know, a story that I love to share is many years ago, I heard Billy Collins talking on NPR, and he's a poet, a great poet, you know. And he talked about when he was a boy, and he went on his first glass bottom boat ride, and he talked about being on this boat and looking down, and all of a sudden this whole world that he didn't even know existed was introduced to him, you know, and he's filled with wonder as he's looking on this glass bottom boat into the ocean. And someone else on the on the boat, leans over, and their glasses fall and hit the floor of the glass bottom boat. And he said it broke the spell immediately, and because it reminded him, oh yeah, we're just on a glass bottom boat, you know. And so he talked about the importance of not dropping the glasses. And what the Holy Spirit spoke to me in that moment was not drawing attention to myself as a writer, you know, so not, the way that I am tempted to do that is by being overly clever or showy in a lyric that you know, like, oh, this will show them that I have a big vocabulary, or that I'm, you know, whatever. And so avoiding doing that, more and more, I think that my job is to be invisible. And if I can do that, then what I have to offer is a doorway for people to enter into this reality that I'd like to make available to them, you know. So don't drop the glasses is a big one for me. What's next for me? I think I've got a book in me. I think so. I'm devoting some time to writing a book, and also working on my songwriting as well. You know, I will add this story on my way out. I watched an interview with Quincy Jones, and he said that music is the voice of God, and I am persuaded by that. My first experience of hearing God speak was through a Simon & Garfunkel song. I wasn't raised in the church. I grew up on the road with my mom's bar band, and but I loved Simon & Garfunkel. I was a little boy, maybe a third grader, and I remember hearing Bridge Over Troubled Water, and something in my heart going, psst, hey, this is how God feels about you. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down, you know. And what I think is remarkable about that is that I wasn't in the church. There wasn't anybody in my life to plant the idea that that's how I might interpret a song like that. So I think it genuinely had to be the Holy Spirit, right? And I love that story. I love that it gets to be mine, and how it reminds me that God is able to make himself heard with or without our help or permission. And in my story, the first time I recognized hearing the voice of God was through a Jewish agnostic pop singer-songwriter named Paul Simon, and I love that he's able to make himself heard. So that means that we who are working in music, we are working with something that is very holy and mysterious, and it's a great honor, and there's great responsibility in that. But there also isn't any pressure, because God is able to do whatever he's going to do through your best song, your worst song. Who knows how he's going to speak, He's going to speak however he wants to. And there's just something liberating and very dignifying about all of that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's exciting. And I know I'll be the first to buy. I'll pre-buy your book.
Hey, all right.
I got
Sounds
$12.99, man. I'll give it to you right now.
Okay, sounds good.
That's awesome. Well, this has been really rich. I knew it would be.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank you for your time and for your songs and for your insights, and mostly just for bringing us to a holy moment today. And, those of you guys listening out there, if you're not ready to sign up for the Song Revolution, then you hadn't been paying attention. So it's been a great day here on the podcast with Jason.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Gray. Thank you, buddy.
I usually have more jokes, but we just jumped to the deep end.
I know, man.
If you bring me back in, I'll do my joke routine with you,
let's
too.
Do that.
Because I do have jokes, too.
We'll do the first part of your presentation.
That's right. Yeah, right.
I think we kind of did the last.
Yeah, I know, right.
Indeed. So we're going to have an altar call now. But anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
It's been great. All right, this has been John Chisum for Nashville Christian Songwriters on the Song Revolution podcast with Centricity music artist and deep well amazing man and songwriter Jason Gray. We'll see you guys next time. Hey, real quick before you go, I want to remind you that we have our next NCS Boot Camp beginning on November 12th. The NCS Boot Camp is a premium 8-week online coaching and mentoring experience. I work with you personally to take massive strides toward fulfilling your call to write songs that can impact the world for the kingdom of God. No joke. That's what we're going for. We want to help you write songs that will be remembered long after all of us have gone on to be with Jesus. That's exactly what we want to do. Songs that really can impact the world. So listen, this is what I want you to do. If you think you're ready for a step like that, then I want you just to go to the show notes, click the link that says something about NCS Boot Camp, and just go read about it. That's all I ask. If you're even slightly interested, just go read about it. No obligation. And then if it's something that's resonating with you, go ahead and apply. All that will happen next is we jump on a phone call. I talk to you about your songs. We talk about your goals, your dreams, your call. And then if it's a right fit, we'll all know it. And if not, hey, no harm, no foul. So go ahead and check out that link in the show notes and see if the NCS Bootcamp is the next right step for you. You're called, and NCS is here to help.